guys, welcome back. We're at Module 4, Video 1 of the ITT content, the short sentences interpretation today. Okay, so by this time we already know how it goes. We're going to hear the recording. I'm going to explain it into a little bit more detail, and then I'm going to do it all straight, all the way through. But as you are listening, make sure to be making your own notes and to be trying it yourself before you hear the answer, right? So before we jump into it today, okay, we're in Module 4, so we're in the last module. So this is the last video for the sentences, guys. So these sentences are maybe a little bit more challenging, okay, but you're gonna see the same type of words that we've already seen from the previous modules. But before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about business English and speaking, right? So I think at the very first module I said something about how to make casual English into business English. Well, that's by using more high-level words and also to make things more concise, okay? You don't need to go on and on and on. That doesn't sound professional. Usually if you hear someone speaking very professionally, they're saying a lot in a short sentence, okay? Because every word has power to it or has a meaning. So that's really what you want to think about when you're interpreting as well. And also, don't get too messed up with the jargon, so phrasal verbs and idioms, business idioms. Sometimes they're useful and important, but other times it can just get confusing, and to be honest, it just sounds a little ridiculous if you're always speaking in idioms. However, there are a couple phrasal verbs I do want to talk about before we get started. So the first one is to reach something, okay? Now, when we reach for something, you might think like stretching to reach for, right? But in business English, we think to reach some sort of accomplishment or achievement. So where could you, or what could you say here? Generally say to reach our goals or to reach a goal, okay? Or to reach an agreement or a negotiation or a compromise. We looked at this word in the last module, compromise. It means a negotiation, right? A little bit of give and take. In another way, in a negative way, it actually means to weaken or to damage. So generally, you can use this verb, it's a really good verb to use for something like getting somewhere, right? Getting an achievement, like being successful in a goal or coming to an agreement. You guys agree on something. Okay, another one that acts similarly to reach something is also to come to, okay? To come to a compromise, to come to a negotiation. Obviously, it doesn't work with to come to a goal, okay? But this is another way that you could say this, right? That you have, had a negotiation, you discussed it, and now you agree on something. Okay, so some really great verbs. This is the phrasal verb here. This is just a regular verb. Another one that's good is to bring up, all right? To bring something up or to bring up something. It means 말을 꺼내낸다, okay? So you address it. That's another great verb, to address something. So when you bring something up or when you address something, that means you're actually bringing attention to it. Okay, you're bringing attention to this thing, to this topic, to this person, okay, so that there can be a discussion or there can be something to deal with, okay? So those are 1, 2, 3, 4 really great verbs to keep in mind as we listen. Now, let's go into the first one and take a listen to the sentence.
4-1 Korean to English sentences 1. 다른 토의 사항이 더 있어요? 그렇다면 시간이 허용하면 다루겠습니다.
Okay, so here there's two parts. They're asking a question, the very first one. So what are they saying? Basically, if you say it really simply, it means, is there anything else to 토의, discuss, to talk about, right? Is there anything else to talk about? If we have time, we'll talk about it, right? But let's go into a little bit more of the advanced English here. Okay, so here, if we're thinking of a business setting, not just is there anything more to talk about, but we'll say, is there anything else, okay, to discuss Or we say, is there anything else on the agenda? This also is a really great word, on the agenda. Agenda here acts like schedule. Okay, so, if there's a meeting, there's kind of number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 issues we have to talk about, right? So here they're asking, the first one is just, is there anything else to talk about? Is there any other point? The second one they're saying, is there anything else on the agenda to discuss? Okay, so remember to go up with your voice. Is there anything else to discuss? Is there anything else on the agenda? And then, 있다면, if there is. Right? 있다면, if there is, now just subject, verb, object. We will discuss it if, 만약 시간이 있다면, if there is time. So here we've got the same structure twice. If there is something to discuss, we will talk about it if there is time. Okay? Now let's take a listen to the second sentence.
2. 리양, 회의록을 기록해 주시겠어요? 지난 회의의 회의록을 읽어주시겠어요?
Okay, so here there may be a word that you might not know right away. 회의록. Here we call them meeting minutes. Okay, and it acts like a noun. Meeting minutes. It's basically the recording of what has been said in a typed form or in a written form. Well, not written, nobody writes. In a typed form, basically, okay? It's not generally voice recording. It's generally so we can read. And this is very, very common to have meeting minutes, all right? So, Li Yang. Here we just say Miss Lee. It's just a title. Miss Lee, okay? 뭐뭐 해주겠어요? Could you, now what would you write for the verb? Some people say record the meeting minutes, which is fine. But generally for something like this, to record something, we say to take. Could you take the meeting minutes? Means could you record the meeting minutes? Think of it like take a picture, right? You're kind of making evidence, you're recording a moment. So could you take the meeting minutes? All right, and now they're asking her something else. 해주시겠어요? Then they said, could you, I would say also, 또한, could you also, what? 읽어주세요. Read what? The same thing. Read the meeting minutes, but what kind of meeting minutes? The previous meeting minutes, right? 그전. So, could you read the previous meeting minutes? So altogether, Miss Lee, could you take the meeting minutes? Also, could you read the previous meeting minutes? Okay, now let's listen to number 3.
3. 개인적인 생각이나 주관적인 논쟁은 하지 말아 주십시오.
Okay, 하지 말아 주십시오. It means please don't do, right? But please don't do or please don't 논쟁. 이런 논쟁을 해주지 마십시오. Alright, but here I think it would be something like bring up. Where is it? Here, right? Please don't bring it up. Please don't bring attention to it, okay? Now the words here, 개인적인 or 주관적인. In English, they are personal or subjective, okay? But the meanings are actually the same. It means coming from the individual, right? It's not a general thing. It's one person's thoughts or it's a comment or a saying about a certain person. So although there's 2 different words in Korean, we don't say subjective 논쟁 arguments. We just say personal arguments or personal topics, okay? So I would say, please do not bring up personal topics, or you could say something like 이런 같은 것들을 피해 주십시오, right? So please avoid personal topics or personal arguments, okay? Now let's listen to number 4.
4. 의견이 일치가 안 되면 투표로 결정하겠습니다. 우리는 무기명 투표를 하고 결정은 다수결로 하겠습니다.
Okay, so here what are they saying? They're saying basically if we cannot reach a compromise or if we cannot reach an agreement, right? 그러면 투표로 결정하겠습니다. 투표. If you 결정 with 투표, what's the verb there? It's voting, right? 투표할 거다. So if we can't reach a compromise or come to an agreement, we will vote. Now, here, the next part, it says 우리는 무기명 투표로 하고 결정은 다수결로 하겠습니다. Okay, so here they're saying the same thing. We're going to vote. Don't get caught up with 무기명 투표 because all that